Are you ready to listen to my dad Joe and Uncle Justin talk about sports? Now on with the show!
The Joe Mays and J-Raff Show is brought to you by Mays Sandwich Shop, which have been serving the greater West Lawn area delicious food for over 70 years. You are listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show.
Boring.
A weekly podcast about sports since 2011.
Don't you ever get tired of being wrong all the time?
With a focus on football.
36-yard line of Philly, shotgun snap to Hurts, dropping back, only one person rushing, Hurts looking, standing still, winding up, long pass, it lands at the 20, no one is there, zeros on the clock, it's over, the Chiefs have won! The Chiefs have won Super Bowl 57 on a game-winning field goal, trailing at 10. At the halftime stop, 24-14, they go on to win 38-35. What a game.
Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and Justin Raffoff.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. I am one of your hosts, Joe Mays, and not here this evening is my co-host, Justin Raffoff. He is gone, out of town, not here to talk about, believe it or not, the East divisions in our NFL preview. This is part 4 of our 5-part series. We will take an entire show to dedicate to our playoff predictions and our Super Bowl expectations. That'll be in a few weeks' time. But before we get to the playoff teams, we have to talk about the NFC East and the AFC East. You know, I don't like to do this show alone. I've done that in the past. It's not a lot of fun. So we brought in our sponsor of the show, my dad, here on Father's Day. Bill joining us. This is not your first time on the show. You've been here multiple times
been here
before.
a lot, but I think you give your partner too many vacation time.
Yeah,
I mean, he seems like he's off more than on.
We need to cut back on Justin's vacation. We'll have to check how many he's supposed to get because he's not here tonight. And missing the NFC East and the AFC East, I mean, one of those is more important to him. But it's going to be a fun show to talk about these 8 teams, all of which are very near and dear to our heart, or ones that we hate. So you're on the show, though, representing the Cowboys, which much to Justin's chagrin, I'm sure. Normally we have an Eagles lover here to talk about the NFC East, but this year we're going to have a Cowboys fan to dissect the NFC East. But I know he would say that he has the last laugh right now, division champ, conference champion, and within just a couple minutes of a Super Bowl victory. We are going to start in the NFC East. We're going to get started off on your side of the coin before we flip to my side and talk about the AFC East. And I know you gave your brother, my uncle, a little preview and said that he might not like what you have to say. But before we talk about his New England Patriots, we're going to start in the NFC East and kick things off here with, we always do our 4th place. I know, see, the problem I have with you being on the show is that you cut our viewership in half when you're not at home to watch. So we'll have to take that. We'll have to take that as we go. Maybe we can get some more viewers in here that you're on the show, because I know you let some people know that you would be here. But I'm sure you're familiar with the order we do things here when we do our NFL preview, and that is we start at the bottom, who we think is going to finish in last place in the NFC East in 2023.
Well, I think the East is pretty much decided, right? I figure the Cowboys are going to go undefeated and win the Super Bowl. So I mean,
all right.
We can just cut this show short.
That's it? That's all you have to say? That's all you have to say? You start out at the top. Don't even worry about the other 3. Cowboys 17-0, Super Bowl champions.
Are you going to say who's your 4th place team, or do you want me to start?
Well, I was going to give you the job of going first. I usually let Justin talk first about what he expects to happen with the 4th place team in the division. So I'll continue that tradition, and you can let everyone know who your 4th place team is this year. To remind everyone at home, the 4th place team last year was the Washington Commanders at 8-1.
Well, that's who I'm going with again.
All right, you're
Washington.
sticking with Washington.
Yep.
What is it about the Commanders that you don't like?
Well, I think it's a big year for them because, first off, they're in the process of getting sold, possibly. And Probably. And because the NFL wants the owner out of there. And the other thing is, I think it's crucial for Rivera to have a good year. He's done mediocre. He's made the playoffs, I guess it was, 3 years ago, but they're just not to that next level. And, they only put up with that for so long, these teams, and then they get rid of their coach.
I know that we talked about this afternoon when prepping for the show, but this will be the 4th year for head coach Ron Rivera. So his first year was that COVID season in 2020, and he took the team to the playoffs that year. Not a lot to work with. Wasn't a strong team. They were able to get into the playoff field, though. Weren't able to really do anything. But here they are now in his 4th season as head coach, trying to build off of a 500 record because of the tie last year. They're working with yet another new quarterback this year. This time it's going to be a second-year player in Sam Howell. He's going to get the reins most likely. I guess people expect that to be the case. They did bring in veteran Jacoby Brissett, who's been all around the league of late. I think they want it to be Sam Howell, however, to see what they have. And there have been some rave reviews about him, about his focus there. They have a decent stable of running backs, Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson Jr. especially. But there doesn't seem to be a lot of excitement surrounding the team, at least what's happening on the field. A lot of the excitement is about what's happening off the field, and with the ownership change that you mentioned is coming down the pipe. But I don't know. I don't think this is a bad team. They were 500 last year, still in the fight to make the playoffs near the end of the year. Have they improved at all? It really comes down to, surprise, surprise, what the quarterback position does for them. They have a nice wide receiver group. Jahan Dotson from Penn State had a great rookie year last season, especially when healthy. Terry McLaurin is still one of the better wide receivers in the NFL. They just, unfortunately, weren't able to get it done for them and finish the season 500, 8-1. They have a somewhat easy start to the year, depending on what you think about these teams, opening with the Cardinals at home and then going to the Broncos. So, hey, you get off to a 2-0 start, and things could be looking pretty good. They do then have the Bills and the Eagles, but then they have the Bears and the Falcons and the Giants, who they're, I think, very similar to the New York Giants. They do have Eagles, Patriots, Seahawks then before they have the Giants. Then the Cowboys, which that is a Thanksgiving game, Giants at Cowboys. And then they play my Dolphins the next week before their very late bye in week 14. Then they finish with the Rams and Jets on the road, and finally 49ers, Cowboys. So they definitely have spurts. So, if they're going to struggle against the likes of the Eagles and Cowboys, they're going to have to win some of these other games to be a threat to make the playoffs. What do you think the record's going to be?
I'm going to leave it about where it is, either 8-9 or 9-8, somewhere around there.
All right, so you're pretty high then on the NFC East if you have the last place team at 8-9 or 9-8. So I'm gonna flip on you. I'm gonna actually say the New York Giants are the last place team in the NFC East.
I do think they're going to take a step
much back. Like the Vikings in the North. I feel like the Giants won a lot of games that I don't think that their talent reflected their record last year. I don't think they're a very good team. I I have problems with expecting the Giants to take a step ahead. I do think Brian Daboll is a good coach, so maybe he'll be the one that doesn't allow them to slide backwards too far. I'm not sure Daniel Jones is the guy. They're having issues, with Saquon Barkley and the franchise tag. What's he going to do? Is he going to sign that and play on it? Is he going to expect a long-term deal, which I think the deadline for that actually is probably coming up sometime soon. So we might get some clarification on that in a few weeks. But they finished third last year. They made the playoffs. They upset the Vikings again, another one of those teams that I don't think was that good. They were 9-7-1 last year. I think it was a little bit of a reach for them to go 9-7-1 last year. I'm just really surprised they were able to do that. They win in spite of Daniel Jones, not because of Daniel Jones. I know they have some pieces on defense that a lot of people like. Leonard Williams, chief among them. They have some young pass rushers in Ojulari and Thibodeau. But I feel like, and this maybe sounds crazy because it comes down to quarterbacks, but we know what Daniel Jones is, and he's average.
Right.
We don't know what Sam Howell is or what he's going to do. So there seems to be, at least to me, I feel like there's a higher ceiling for Washington. There could also be a lower floor, but I feel like the Giants are stuck in the middle. I don't see them winning 10 games. I don't see them being better than last year. So at best, I see them as a 9-8 team, but I could see them dropping back a bit. Now they start with Dallas. That's their first game of the year. I think that's Sunday night. It is in New York, so that would be a huge game for the Giants should they take over that. But then 4 of their next 5 games are on the road, and the other home game is against Seattle. So they've got a tough start to the season, hosting Dallas, then going out west for Arizona and San Francisco. San Francisco, that game's on a short week. That's on Thursday night. Then they come home quickly for a game against the Seahawks, or a playoff team last year. Then they go on the road to 2 AFC East teams in the Dolphins and the Bills, who a lot of people think are going to be pretty good this year. So the Giants have a really rough start to the season. And, if they're sitting there at 2-4 or 1-5, I'm not sure people are going to be very happy with Daniel Jones or the entire team. So I don't know. And 2 of their final 3 games are against the Eagles. So this isn't exactly a very forgiving schedule. They do have 3 of the final 5 at home after the bye week in week 13. But to me, I think the Giants are looking to backpedal a bit and finish in 4th place. I'm going to put them at 7-10 and my 4th place team. But the Redskins, oh gosh, here we go. The Commanders are my 3rd place team. And I think they go 9-8. So a slight step up. I think Sam Howell looks good, but still young. Still that they don't have enough pieces along the offensive line or on the defense to really challenge the Eagles and the Cowboys, who we're going to talk about at 1 and 2 here shortly. So my 4 is going to be the Giants at 7-10. My 3 is going to be the Commanders at 9-8. Your Commanders you have at 8-9, 9-8.
And that's pretty much what I'm going to put the Giants.
And you're going to have the Giants tiebreaker in getting the 3rd place spot in the NFC East. We don't have to talk about anyone being a wild card team, since we'll do that as a collective show in a few weeks. But is there anything else about the Giants that you wanted to touch on?
I think a lot comes down, like you said, what's happened with Barkley. If he holds out, or what's happening with his contract and everything, because he had a great year last year.
Yeah, I mean he looked good for the first time in a few years after the injuries slowed him down. He had a fantastic rookie season, but just couldn't get it going then the next few years, but had a rebound season last year, and I was happy about that. But once they prioritized Daniel Jones and getting him signed to a long-term deal, you knew Saquon Barkley was the guy that was going to get the short end of the stick and get the franchise tag, and I'm sure he's not happy about that. He wants a long-term deal as well. It just hasn't been in the cards of late. So
I think it would have been more important to sign him for a long contract, because I agree with you. I think Jones is a mediocre quarterback.
Yeah, Justin and I have a few times on this show gone through where we think the quarterbacks rate, and I don't see Daniel Jones. I'm not sure he cracks the top 16. There's 32 starting quarterbacks. Is he in that top half? I would say on a good day he could maybe get to 12, but then I feel like more often than not he's in that like 15 to 20 range, and I don't think that's good enough to get it done.
Yep.
So they're going to need to figure out what to do there. Uncle Rich said that he was having trouble. Sorry, we were a few minutes late because I was having technical difficulties on this end. I had to make some Wi-Fi internet changes, and the program didn't like it, so I had to reboot it, everything. So hopefully people that wanted to watch this live have found us here on the show. We do have a few watching, so we appreciate that. If you have any questions or you want to get your 2 cents in, leave a comment, or if you have my cell number, give us a text and let us know how you think the NFC East will finish this year. So we did spots 4 and 3. Now we're to spot 2, and it is your turn to go first again. So if Justin's not listening live, I think his head is about to explode. So
Yeah.
who do you have in second place?
Philadelphia.
Okay. What's their record?
I'm going to say, a lot of times you have that Super Bowl hangover, and I think they only had 2 losses last year.
3. They were 3.
Oh, 3. I was
I
thinking
think
it's
the
2.
last week they didn't have to play their guys that last week, I believe.
But I'm looking at them,
So they were 14 and 3.
Yeah.
Division champs, NFC champs.
I'm looking at them with 5 losses.
Okay, so a slight step back, going 12 and 5. What do you think is their biggest step back will come? Offense or defense?
Well, I just boy, good question there. I felt the quarterback had such a good year that I just don't see him doing that again. That's just my opinion. Of course, maybe I'm like Justin, very prejudiced. And
who's ever the quarterback of the Eagles you don't like?
No, I wouldn't say that. But I mean, I'm not as anti-hating as Justin is about the Eagles. But I think they performed last year. That was just my gut feeling, and everything pretty much fell into place for them. They could easily win that Super Bowl. So I mean, everything went their way, and I just don't. I think it's going to be everything went right. Some things could go wrong this year, and that's why I had them drop back.
Okay. They did lose both their coordinators. Both of them are
Right.
now head coaches. Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon both left. Steichen went to the Colts. Gannon went to the Cardinals. So they are breaking in 2 new coordinators for Coach Nick Sirianni. And we'll find out quickly what Sean Desai is able to do with his defensive group and what Brian Johnson can do on offense. Now, Desai was someone brought in. Brian Johnson was a holdover from, he was a position coach for the Eagles before that. We'll see. He was quarterbacks coach. So Jalen Hurts is probably happy to have him back. Finally, Marcus Mariota is a quarterback for the Eagles. He's a backup trying to challenge Ian Book to back up Jalen Hurts. He had a weird year in Atlanta last year where he was able to do a lot with his legs, but not so much with his arm. And then they wanted to see what Desmond Ridder had, and there was a falling out there. And now he's in Philadelphia. About a decade after people thought he'd be in Philadelphia, here he is now. So the Eagles did lose a fair amount on defense. In addition to their coordinator, TJ Edwards went to the Bears, Marcus Epps went to the Raiders, Gardner Johnson, the other safety, to the Lions, and the big one, Javon Hargrave, to the 49ers, and Kazir White to the Cardinals. So all guys who started or played significant role for the Eagles defense gone. They didn't re-sign Robert Quinn or Ndamukong Suh or Linval Joseph. So some of those midseason acquisitions or free agent signees, the veterans that they were going to rely on to help stop the opposing offenses rushing the ball on them, they are gone, not re-signed. Offensively, I don't feel like they lost as much. Dillard went to the Titans, the offensive lineman, Minshew is now a backup with the Colts. Pascal went on to the Cardinals. Miles Sanders, perhaps the biggest name, lost. The running back, the former Penn State player, went to Carolina, and new coach Frank Reich. But probably the biggest is the offensive lineman, Isaac Seumalo, to the Steelers. If you listen to New Heights, the Kelsey Brothers podcast, Jason talks about how losing Isaac to the Steelers hurts because he felt that Seumalo was one of the most underrated offensive linemen and one of the best players in the locker room. He went to Pittsburgh on a 3-year deal. They do have guys that they can put in there that have been learning, including Cam Jurgens, who's probably the heir apparent to Jason Kelsey, who feel like is probably going to retire after this coming season. He is back for this 2023 season, though. Cam Jurgens likely to step in at that guard spot. At least that's what we've been hearing as a possibility. So will they miss a beat? I don't know. They were pretty amazing last year. The Eagles' offensive line was one of the big reasons that they were able to do what they did with Jalen Hurts in the running game, and then with the variety of people carrying the rock in the backfield. Of course, there wasn't all losses. They did sign Greedy Williams, Justin Evans, and Terrell Edmonds defensively. And on offense, they brought in Rashad Penny. I already mentioned Marcus Mariota. And Olamide Zaccheaus, a wide receiver from the Falcons. Those are the big ones that they brought in to supplement their losses. And then, of course, we know about their draft picks. You were here live when some of them were going down. Justin and I talked about them a lot. Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith, 2 Georgia standouts in the first round. Those guys are being added to a defense that was already pretty good. Again, a lot of losses, but now a couple of young guys to add into that rotation. Carter can help replace Hargrave, and Nolan Smith, another edge rusher, can learn from Hassan Reddick, who had an incredible season last year. I also love their third-round picks. Tyler Steen, the offensive lineman from Alabama, there's a chance that he could push to replace Isaac Seumalo as well, and Sidney Brown, the safety from Illinois, before they got Keely Ringo from another defensive player from Georgia. So great draft from the Eagles. That's how you supplement your losses of veterans, is by having a great draft, and at least on paper, the Eagles were able to do that. Now, taking a look at their schedule, they open up, as Uncle Rich has already told us, in New England on September 10th. I believe the Patriots are also honoring Tom Brady that day. Uncle Rich reached out and said we're welcome to join him at that game.
Go Pats.
I don't know that you would hear him say that too often, so you might want to take that one, Uncle Rich, with what he just threw down there for you. So let's see. The Eagles then host the Vikings, and that's become a chippy thing over the years, as the Vikings have. The Vikings stole Justin Jefferson from the Eagles, essentially, as the Eagles passed on him. The Vikings have kind of played little brother to the Eagles over the last few years. So that's an interesting game at the Link on a Thursday night already in week 2. They got the Cowboys right before their bye. That one's in Philadelphia on November 5th. After the bye, they get a rematch with the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. That will be at Arrowhead, and that game is on a Monday night on November 20th. So right before Thanksgiving, we'll get the Eagles-Chiefs game in Kansas City. My Dolphins are playing at the Link again for the first time in 8 years. That's happening on October 22nd. That is a Sunday night game. So a lot of interesting schedule tidbits here for the Eagles as it relates to all of our rooting interests. You, me, Uncle Rich. A lot of good ones here. Also, Adam, the Eagles are playing the Bills at the Link on November 26th. That is Thanksgiving weekend. So, and then a rematch with the 49ers, who they demolished in the NFC Championship game, but the 49ers like to believe that it would have been a closer game if Brock Purdy was healthy. And a lot of people subscribe to that notion. I'm not one of them. I don't think the 49ers were going to win that game no matter what. But we'll see what happens when they come to the Link on December 3rd. Then the next week they got to go to Dallas and Seattle before finishing with 2 out of 3 games with the New York Giants. One on Christmas Day and then one the final week of the season. So you have the Eagles dropping a few games down from where they were last year, from 13-4 to, did you say 12-5?
Yeah.
You only have them going down one. No, they were 14-3. You have them going down 2 games. 14-3 to 12-5. Obviously nothing to sneeze at, but if that's their second place, That means you had the Cowboys winning at least 12 games and the tiebreaker. I'm not ready to do that. I'm not putting the Eagles in second. I'm keeping them in first. I do have Dallas in second, and I do think Dallas is going to be very good. I'm not ready to leapfrog Philadelphia, though, after what Philadelphia was able to do last year. The Cowboys were 12-5, which is what you have the Eagles going this year. The Cowboys were 12-5, second place in the NFC East. They beat the Buccaneers 31-14 and ended Tom Brady's career. Then they lost to the 49ers 12-19 for the second year in a row, losing to the 49ers in not very good fashion. They did get rid of Kellen Moore. That was something I wanted to talk to you about. Do you think some of the Cowboys' problems was the offensive coordinator? He's in Los Angeles now with the Chargers.
Chargers, right. I don't know. I mean,
I know you soured on Jason Garrett after a while when he was the coach. Then they got McCarthy. Kellen Moore's been there for a few years now. He was seen as a bright spot at the end of the Garrett days. He held over into the beginning of McCarthy. But now they got rid of him, and now McCarthy's going to take over a larger role in the play calling.
I like I've always told you, Prescott, I really like him, but he's so erratic. I mean, like the Green Bay game, I'm just picking that one out. He threw 2 interceptions, and they got down really quick, and they ended up losing that in overtime, that game. He just can be so erratic. He can have a great game, and then next time, just too many turnovers. And I can't really say I blame the offensive coordinator for that, but maybe it was time to make a change, though.
Yeah, sometimes you can get I don't want to say a false sense of hope, but maybe that change will inject some life into them. I feel it's more Mike McCarthy flailing to keep his job because obviously the team is talented, but they've come up short in the playoffs.
Yep.
Which his former team has also been doing, the Packers. LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers before they jettisoned him, which we'll get to that in a few minutes. Failing in the playoffs. Great regular season. MVP seasons from Aaron Rodgers. Failed to make the Super Bowl. Cowboys kind of throwing away some really good teams. Have a lot of competition against them because the Eagles were great last year, very good the year before. Brady and the Bucs were in the way too. These 49ers teams have been a thorn in their side, but it feels like better offensive play calling, better offensive decision making. The Cowboys could have beat the 49ers, and then you're in a what-if scenario, one more game, and you're in the Super Bowl.
Well, he had 1 or 2 interceptions in that game, too. I mean, he can't do that. And the win because they have the talent, and they even made their wide receiving core better this past year in the offseason. I feel they did. Because you guys can't depend just on Lamb. I mean, there's other guys there, but, they got Cooper and, I just hope, we'll wait and see what happens. I guess I get sometimes too optimistic.
So, Dak Prescott missed some games last year, including one of their 5 losses to the Eagles in Week 6. I know you got revenge on the Eagles without Jalen Hurts on Christmas Eve last year. 2 of the 5 losses by the Cowboys were in overtime. 1 to the Packers and 1 to the Jaguars. Neither of those I would consider bad losses. The Packers were in the midst of their comeback to attempt to make the playoffs, which they ultimately fell short because they choked against the Lions at home. But the Jaguars were no joke towards the end of the season. They lost to the Commanders the last week. I don't think Dallas had anything to play for that game,
right.
So that game doesn't even really count to me. They lost by 9 to the Eagles in Week 6. Again, I don't believe Prescott played in that game. And they lost the first game of the year to the Buccaneers. Some great wins against Bengals in Week 2. That's a great win. Honestly, Lions in Week 7. The Detroit team really had a turnaround. Beat the Bears by 20. The Bears, that might have been before Chicago really started to come on offensively, at least. Smoked the Vikings. I remember being like, that's the real Minnesota team right there. Dallas just beat them 40-3. Hammered the Colts. Beat the Eagles again without Jalen Hurts. And then took down the Titans. So overall, it was a very good season last year for Dallas. A couple overtime losses, and hey, those 2 overtime losses become wins, and you actually fight to beat Washington. You're 15-2.
Well,
so
I said Cooper. I meant Cooks. They picked up him.
Oh yeah,
they picked up 2 really good players. I hate to say it, but from Michigan.
Mozzie Smith. You're talking about the draft?
Yeah, in the draft.
Yeah, and Greg Cosell on the Ross Tucker podcast really talked highly of Mozzie Smith and his addition to that defensive line in Dallas. Now, the biggest loss, at least name-wise, was Ezekiel Elliott. I know a lot of people soured on him the last few years. He wasn't getting it done. I still think there's a good chance that he could be re-signed because he's still a free agent out there. The team did bring back Leighton Vander Esch at linebacker, probably the biggest name, and Cooper Rush, who filled in admirably for Dak Prescott last year. He is back as a backup quarterback. But then the 2 biggest offseason acquisitions were Brandon Cooks, the wide receiver, who's still not 30. He feels like he's been in the league for 15 years. He's only 29. He came over from Houston in a trade. And then Stephon Gilmore. Now, he is on the wrong side of 30. He started to make a name for himself with the Bills, and then he ended up with New England, where he was, I believe, Defensive Player of the Year at one point. And he's bounced around the league a little bit, but still a really good defensive back, someone that they needed. And then after losing Ezekiel Elliott, or at least for the time being, they brought in Ronald Jones, who just won the Super Bowl with the Chiefs, but started out with the Buccaneers, who actually, I believe he won a Super Bowl with them as well. So it's never a bad idea to have players in the room that have been to and won Super Bowls. So Ronald Jones is added to that backfield with Tony Pollard, who's recovering from an injury. That's probably the biggest hurdle for the Dallas offense, is what's going on with Tony Pollard. Now, you brought it up about the kicking situation, because that cost them at times last year. The current kicker on the roster is Tristan Vizcaino. He was brought to the Cowboys in January. So he is a new option for the Dallas Cowboys this year at kicker. They had been going with Brett Maher in 2022, and he had a rough go of it.
Boy, did he ever.
He had
couldn't get on track.
He missed 4 out of 5 extra points during the Cowboys' wildcard win against the Buccaneers. And then he had issues, I believe, the next week. Didn't he miss the first one the next game against the 49ers as well? So he's gone. It was his 3rd time kicking for the Cowboys, but it doesn't look like he's going to get another year, as Vizcaino is the guy at the moment. But, kicking is so weird in the NFL that could change at any time. In terms of Dallas's schedule, opening the season at the Giants and then hosting the Jets before a trip to Arizona and then welcoming in the New England Patriots. That's the first 4 weeks.
I like the first 4 games. They could get
Giants,
off to a
Jets,
nice...
Cardinals, Patriots.
Yep, I think...
Then you got to go to the West Coast for 2 weeks, including one against the 49ers, who have been... It's almost like it's the 1980s all over again.
Right.
And also the Chargers, who, man, that's a team I can't figure out. But then you have a early bye, week 7. And you come out of that bye against the Rams at home. You got to win that game because the Rams I don't think are any good before going to Philadelphia. And I don't think you have I don't know what I want to say that. I want to say I don't think you have an awful schedule. But what's interesting to me is you need to be good by Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Because if you look after Thanksgiving, these
tougher.
next 5 weeks, if the teams play to what many people are expecting, from November 30th through December 30th, the Cowboys host the Seahawks, host the Eagles, go to Buffalo, go to Miami, host Detroit. So that's 4 playoff teams last year, and one that was playing really good at the end of the season.
I was just going to say, any other year you'd say, I'll take Detroit.
Yeah, I'll take the Lions.
No.
So you and I are going to have... Last year, you had an interesting Christmas Eve with most of the family.
Yep.
But not me. I sat there. I said I didn't care what was happening in this game. This year, you and I have an interesting time because Dallas is at Miami on Christmas Eve afternoon.
Oh, really?
So we'll be done with our church. We've been going to the morning session with the kids.
What time is that game?
3:25.
3:25. We'll be up at Uncle Dennis's.
So to finish the game, we'll be at the family party. It's in Miami, because 4 years from now it'll be in Dallas again. So maybe we'll get to that one, which we had planned 4 years ago to go to it, and it didn't work out.
Well, like I said, I picked 4 losses. I figured the Eagles, and then we'll split.
So you think you're going Eagles in second at 12-5, and the Cowboys in first at 13-4.
Right.
Okay.
And I figure one of those losses will be with the Eagles.
Probably the home one.
And so that gives me still 3 other losses, and they could win or lose any of those. It depends.
Well, I mean, you got 49ers.
Okay.
I'm just highlighting the ones that are tough. At the 49ers, at the Eagles. Seattle, but you're at home.
Yeah, Seattle doesn't really scare me too much.
Eagles, but at Buffalo and at Miami, and hosting Detroit. Honestly, I feel like if the Cowboys are going to go 13-4, by the time you get through Thanksgiving against Washington on November 23rd, that's how many games? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's you need to be at least 9-2.
Right. I agree with you.
Because then you have Seahawks, Eagles, Bills, Dolphins, Lions.
And that, to me, the easy one out of all that, easier one would be Seattle.
I feel like Seattle, Detroit, and Miami, and Philly and Buffalo are the 2 toughest. I hope by the end this is the toughest game for you, but we'll see what happens. So I'm not that far off with you. I think the Cowboys and Eagles they were very close last year. I think they're very close this year. I think because of what the Eagles have been able to do with some young guys in the draft last year and the draft this year, I think with the steps forward Jalen Hurts made this past year, as long as he doesn't take too much of a step back. I mean, if he gets better, you're in trouble. If he gets better than what he did last year. And I don't think that's off the table. I think it's more likely that he stays the same or even has a slightly worse year. Slightly. Nothing significant. Than he does have a slightly better year, because it would be tough to top last year. Maybe if he stays fully healthy for the whole season. I still think the Eagles are the better team. I trust their coaches more. And I'm not a huge Sirianni guy. He's not one of my favorites. Them losing their coordinator scares me a bit, but Justin and I've also talked about how sometimes changing coordinators actually gives you a little bit of a bump, as they're throwing in some wrinkles or changes that other teams aren't used to because the guys that they've programmed against and game planned against are gone. So the Eagles were 14-3. Do I see them being 14-3 again? Probably not. But I think 12-5, 13-4 is doable. So I have them as my number 1. Obviously, then I have Dallas at my number 2. I think Dallas is probably right there as well. And maybe they finish tied at 12-5 or 13-4. I'm going to give the edge to the Eagles. Maybe that comes down to division record. Maybe the Eagles beat Dallas twice, but Dallas still ties with them, but the Eagles get the tiebreaker. I still think it's Philly 1, Dallas 2. Then slightly below that, I would put the Commanders and then the Giants right behind them. So we're pretty close. We have each set flip-flopped because you had Washington 4 and the Giants 3. Then up top, you had the Eagles 2 and Dallas 1. So I think that's about it. The only thing that I am interested in is, should it finish my way, or at least if the Eagles win again, it'll be the first time since 2004 that the NFC East is won by the same team that won it the year before. So first back-to-back champs since the Eagles did it in 03-04, and that was actually the last 2 years of a 4-year run where the Eagles won it 01, 02, 03, 04. And actually back in 01, it wasn't even the same NFC East as it is now. There was, I believe the Cardinals were still a part of the division in 2001. So Eagles last team to win back-to-back or more NFC East titles has not happened since 2004. Obviously, the Eagles' last division championship was last year. Cowboys 2 years ago. Washington 3 years ago. You got to go back to 2011 for the Giants, and I don't see that streak breaking this year. So Giants are going to be over a decade since they last won the division, although you go back to that time period, they were winning a Super Bowl. So I don't think people are ready to freak out too much about that, although it's New York, so people freak out about things all the time. All right, quickly, let's jump over to the AFC East now, and my realm. We're starting at the bottom, though, and hopefully no one has the Dolphins down there. I made you go first for the NFC East, so I'll go first for the AFC East. This is tough. This is really tough for me because it boggles my mind that I'm actually going to put the Patriots in last after what happened. I mean, I'm looking here at the AFC East, and there's a lot of a navy blue and red winning that division many times since 2001. Up through 2019, they had won it every year except for 2 since 2001. The Jets won it in 2002. My Dolphins won it surprisingly in 2008, but yes, that was the year that Tom Brady missed almost the entire season other than like a quarter or something like that. All the way through 2019, it's basically the Patriots. Since then, the Bills have rattled off 3 straight. The Patriots, to me, on paper, look like the worst team in the division in terms of talent. I think the Jets surprised a lot of people last year, but the biggest thing holding them back was quarterback play. They traded for Aaron Rodgers, and as much as I don't like Aaron Rodgers, and I don't think he's even as good as he was 3 years ago, what they were able to do with Mike White, or in spite of what was happening with Zach Wilson or Joe Flacco, the Jets scared me last year that they were that good that quick because they had a great draft last year, and I thought they had a very good draft this year. They had both the offensive and defensive rookies of the year in Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner. They had a great running back who, unfortunately for them and his health, tore his ACL and missed half of the season. I don't know if he'll be ready to come back at the beginning, but the Jets scare me. I can't put them in last place.
Were they 8-9 last year?
The Jets, they were 7-10.
7-10.
So,
but a good 7-10.
Right, and they were 7-4 at Thanksgiving, and then they lost their last 6 games. They lost by 5 to the Vikings, 8 to the Bills, 3 to the Lions, 16 to the Jags, 17 to Seattle, and 5 to the Dolphins, who were also using their backup quarterback.
None of those are really awful teams either. So they kept them close.
Right. So they were 7-4 at Thanksgiving. On November 27th, they beat the Bears 31-10. Then they lost their next 6 games to fall out of playoff contention. But they beat the Steelers, Dolphins, Packers, and Broncos 4 weeks in a row. The Dolphins one that really makes me mad because the game was much closer than 40-17. And the Dolphins were also, once again, both times the Dolphins and Jets played last year, Skylar Thompson, their third-string quarterback, played all or most of the game. Because when the Dolphins went to New York on October 9th and lost 40-17, Tua was out. He got injured in the Bengals game, missed the rest of the Bengals game, all the Steelers game, that's the Jets schedule. But Tua was out. He missed the game on October 9th. The first offensive play of the game for the Dolphins, a supposed unbiased spotter said that the Dolphins' backup quarterback showed concussion symptoms. And if you watch the replay, there's not a single symptom exhibited at all. None. But he was pulled from the game because of it. So Skylar Thompson had to play the entire game. And then January 8th, the last game of the year, which the Dolphins won, Skylar Thompson played again because both Dolphins quarterbacks were injured again. So the Jets it was a weird season for them last year. But I'm not ready to talk about the Jets. We're talking about the Patriots because we're talking about who's going to be in 4th place. And it's crazy for me to have them down there. Last year I had the Jets down there. And the Jets fulfilled that, but only because they lost the last 6 games of the season. The Patriots were not looking great throughout the year. They finished 8-9, good for 3rd place. They were a shell of themselves. They didn't look good at all. I think maybe the best game they played was when they shut out the Lions 29-0 on October 9th. But they started the year with a loss to the Dolphins. They did beat the Steelers the next week, but then they lost to the Ravens and Packers before coming to life against the Lions. They somehow lost to the Bears 33-14. They're probably their most impressive win last year. See, it's honestly that probably the Lions game on October 9th, 29-0, because
that was before Detroit got really hot, though.
Right. But that's what I mean. Like that wasn't even when Detroit was really good. They beat Pittsburgh by a field goal in Pittsburgh. That's tough to do. So that's a pretty good win. They smoked the Browns, but the Browns weren't that good to begin with. They beat the Jets twice, but they lost to the Vikings. They lost to the Bills. They lost to the Raiders. Oh, remember that Raiders loss? Like,
yes.
How does that team lose? That was nuts. They lost to the Bengals. They beat the Dolphins again. Backup quarterbacks. I don't know what to make of them. There's animosity between Mac Jones and Bill Belichick. There was weird coordinator issues going on last year. Now, Bill O'Brien is back in New England. That scares me a little bit because I respect Bill O'Brien. He's been there before. He knows how to work with Belichick. If Mac Jones is anything, he needs to prove it this year, or Mac Jones is going to be gone. Because there was rumors that Aaron Rodgers turned down a trade to New England. That just came out in the last few days. I don't know if I believe it or not, but there's the rumors out there that the Packers wanted to trade him to New England. He said no because he wanted to go to New York because that's where Nathaniel Hackett, his former offensive coordinator, is after his disastrous half a season as the Denver head coach. He was in he was in New York after being in Green Bay for many years and being one of the reasons Aaron Rodgers was winning MVP awards. And the Jets were working on getting his buddies to New York, and New England supposedly came in with an offer that Green Bay wanted to take, and Aaron vetoed it. Supposedly. I look at the roster. They were 8-9 last year. Does the addition of Bill O'Brien and a competent offensive coordinator change a lot?
No comments from your uncle.
Well, I haven't looked, but They lost Damian Harris to the Bills, a division rival. They lose one of their running backs. They lost Jacoby Myers to the Raiders. They lost Isaiah Wynn to the Dolphins. They didn't really bring in too many people of note. Probably the biggest is Gesicki. Well, I shouldn't say that. They brought in Juju Smith-Schuster, who won the Super Bowl with the Chiefs. They brought in Gesicki from the Dolphins. They signed Riley Reif who was with the Bears last year. So Smith-Schuster and Gesicki are the two big ones. Could they help in offense? Sure. They did have a decent draft, at least early. They got Christian Gonzalez, the cornerback from Oregon, who was thought of as a possible top 10 pick. They got him at 17. Thought that was a really good pick. Again, kind of like with Daniel Jones with the Giants, is Mac Jones any better? During his rookie year, people thought, "Oh, this is the guy. He's going to be good." Really bad season last year. If Bill O'Brien can get something out of him, maybe the Patriots aren't the fourth best team in the division.
That's a tough division.
It is a tough division. It feels. I don't like picking them fourth because I feel like I'm asking for something catastrophic to happen to the Dolphins now. Although Tua getting beat up last year wasn't that much better. They only finished a game behind Miami. Miami was 9-8 because of their issues when Tua wasn't healthy. Although Miami did almost upset Buffalo in Buffalo with a third-string quarterback in the playoffs. We'll get to that. I don't know. I don't have to go along with what other people are saying, but I can't look at these rosters and say that the Patriots aren't the worst on paper. I do sort of, also feels crazy to say this, it almost feels like a make or break year for Belichick too. Not that he's going to get fired, but like that he might be like, it might be time to move on. I don't know that Kraft would fire him after 4 down years. But
Uncle Rich will.
but I mean, because of the division they're in and the crossover with the NFC East, this is not going to be an easy schedule. So if they take a step back, they were 8-9 last year. If they go 6-11, there's going to be a lot of uneasy people in New England. So let's look at their schedule. We already talked. They open with Philadelphia and Miami back to back.
0-2.
I hope so. I hope so. I don't care about that week 1 game. Okay, whatever. But I hope they're 0-2, or I hope they've lost at least 1 game after week 2, and I hope it's the second game. But like they have to win one of those games against the Dolphins or Jets. Look at this schedule. This is going to be like it for the AFC East teams. Eagles, Dolphins, at Jets, at Cowboys, Saints, at Raiders, Buffalo, at Miami. That's their first 8 games. What game in there is a guaranteed win?
No, I wouldn't say a guarantee. The best shot would be probably the Raiders.
Probably the Raiders is their best shot, but again,
They blew that last year.
Is that a guaranteed win?
No.
So that's tough. That is a tough opening. Are they better than Washington? That's week 9. They're probably better than the Colts. Although with that rookie quarterback, if he gets going, and that's not at home. That's in Germany. That's one of New England's home game. It's in Germany. Then they have the bye. Then they come back. Again, Giants. That's a game they have to win. Are they better than the Giants? Chargers, Steelers, Chiefs. At Denver, at Buffalo, finish with the Jets. How many of those 17 games are guaranteed wins? There's not a single guaranteed win on that schedule. Are there games more likely? Of course there are. At Denver. But again, you got to go to Denver. That's not easy. Sean Payton's the new head coach out there. I don't think Russell Wilson's going to play as bad as he did last year. So, is that a possible win? Sure. Chargers, is that a possible win? Yeah, sure. At Pittsburgh. They won at Pittsburgh last year. But those 17 games, there's not a single game that you can say they are winning that game. Now, it also works the other way. Is there a single game on there that you would be shocked if they did win, though?
Philadelphia.
You don't think they get any chance to beat Philadelphia at home when they're honoring
Well,
Tom Brady?
Saying that. No, I'm not saying that. It's also the first game. So
I don't
that
think
helps.
the odds are with them.
That's
but
why.
they still, even after 3 down years, especially last year, the Patriots still have an aura about them that they still get the benefit of the doubt. Not nearly as much as they did 5 years ago, but
Where's Kansas City at?
it's in New England on my birthday.
Oh, it's on.
So I have New England last. I have them. They were 8-9 last year. I have them going 6-11. And this could look awful. They could go 11-6 because Bill O'Brien turned Mac Jones into a competent quarterback, and he plays better than.
Or Bill O'Brien
at
turns
least
him in the hook.
That Bill Belichick and Bill O'Brien helped Mac Jones along. The new additions to the offense in Gesicki and Smith-Schuster offset the losses they have. Their defense plays better. Right now I just don't see it. What do you think? Who do you have
With
in
that
fourth
schedule
place?
you're showing there, I was thinking more of 5 wins for them.
5. Oh, you have them even worse. I got to go to these texts. Okay, so I have them 6-11 in fourth. You have them 5-12 in fourth. Here it is from Uncle Rich. First NFC East, because I didn't do his NFC East. He has Commanders in fourth, so he agrees with you. Giants in third. But then he goes with me. Cowboys second, first with the Eagles. I don't disagree with any of that. I think that's very feasible. Here we go. This is his predictions. He has the Dolphins in fourth. He says, not sure of quarterback. He just texted me, 5 wins. He has the Patriots in third. He says that they got an offensive coordinator. So if he has them in third, I'm thinking he has them at 9 or 10 wins. I would think is in third place. Jets, he has second. They have Rodgers, but he can be beaten. And then he has the Bills in first. He says the Pats split with Dolphins and Jets. Here at the bottom says his coffee club says the Pats record will be 7-10 or 11-6. That's a 4-game swing. Well, I said I have him at 6-11. I could see him going 11-6. Just because it feels weird to peg them at something less. I mean, they were under 500 last year, but for them to drop even farther away from that, it's hard to grasp that after the last 20 years. After what's happened over 20 plus years, to say that they might only win, like he said, 5 wins.
I did that just to bust your Uncle
well,
Reg.
he definitely has a lot to say about that.
I would say, my high would be 7 wins, with that schedule you have there, unless
It's a
Bill
really tough
O'Brien does
schedule.
miracle work up there, because their offense really was putrid.
Now it gets interesting. So you have to go with your third place team here before I go. So we both have New England in last, but you're up for number 3. So who is your third?
You're not going to like my third. I picked the Dolphins.
All right. Well, what do you have their record being? They were 9-8 last year.
See, I think the next 3 are going to be really close. I think Buffalo's going to.
Well, you had New England at 0-17.
I'm going to say I feel your Dolphins are going to be somewhere around 9-8 or 10-7.
Man, I would if they go 9-8 again. I think that means Tua didn't stay healthy. That is a legitimate concern. I hope he can play through that, because at the beginning of the year he was playing at an MVP level before he got hurt, and then even when he came back, he was still playing really well. I hope they can push through that. And I hope he can play the entire season. All right, so you have them 9-8, 10-7, but in third place. So they'd still possibly be in line for the 6th or 7th wild card seed at that point, based on the last few years of the playoffs. Miami's schedule is obviously not going to be much different than New England's. Miami went 9-8, where that was good enough for second in the AFC East last year, but we've already talked about how much better the AFC East has gotten. The Dolphins added Mike White at quarterback to back up Tua Tagovailoa. Mike White played really well at time for the New York Jets, so I love that signing. They brought in one of the best linebacking free agents in David Long from the Titans. Braxton Berrios, also a comfort guy from the Jets, going to Miami. Isaiah Wynn, I mentioned, coming over from New England, and also a Jets offensive lineman, Cedric Ogbuehi, coming to shore up that position as well. The Dolphins didn't have a lot of draft picks, but they picked 2 players I was really high on, in Cam Smith, the cornerback from South Carolina, and Devin Achane, the running back, the speedster from Texas A&M. There are rumors out there that they would like to be in on Dalvin Cook, who's still in his 20s and has been an electric running back, again, when healthy, over the last few years. The Vikings got rid of him recently. Not a lot of changes for the Dolphins elsewhere. They also made a couple big additions via trade. And obviously the biggest of that was getting Jalen Ramsey from the Rams, who, when he's not running his mouth and being obnoxious, is one of the best defensive backs in the league still. They need better play from Xavier Howard, who is an all-pro cornerback for them, but did not have a good year last year. If he gets back to form and the addition of Ramsey helps out. Oh, and they also have a new defensive coordinator. That's probably the biggest thing that people have been talking about in Miami, Vic Fangio, who was technically not a coach last year. He was a consultant for the Eagles and helped set up their defense and push them in the direction that they went towards the Super Bowl. He was helping out in that regard. He's now the defensive coordinator in Miami under head coach Mike McDaniel. If the team is healthy, they were not healthy last year. Obviously, when you lose your quarterback for multiple stretches of the season, that's going to be an issue. If they can stay healthy, it's tough for me to see them not winning 10 games if they're healthy. Huge if. Especially when the biggest is at quarterback. But they have too much talent on offense at the skill positions, and their defense is stocked at all three levels now with the additions of David Long at linebacker, Jalen Ramsey in the secondary. And I'm a huge fan of Raekwon Davis, Emmanuel Ogbah, Zach Seiler, and Christian Wilkins in the 3 or 4 man front rotation. Their defense, honestly, I would be disappointed if they weren't a top 5 unit. Offensively, and this is the reason that I hesitate to put them challenging for a division title, is their offensive line scares me. On top of Tua's health issue, the offensive line was the weak point last year. Teron Armstead, one of the best tackles in the league when healthy. Can't stay healthy. Missed a whole bunch of games last year. Liam Eichenberg has not been good for them. Robert Hunt and Robert Jones have been average. Austin Jackson looks like a bust, a first-round pick, unfortunately. Connor Williams came over from Dallas last year, an average player, already wants more money. I was very high on the signing of Isaiah Wynn from the Patriots. And they got Dan Feeney from the Jets. So they need to figure out who their starting 5 is. They need to have a good backup interior lineman and tackle because they just can't get through the season healthy. If they would have been able to add another great offensive lineman, if they would have been in on Orlando Brown, who went from the Chiefs to the Bengals, or they were able to trade now Jonah Williams, who once out of Cincinnati after they signed Orlando Brown, they were able to add another piece, I would feel a lot better. But I'm going to be a little bit reserved with Miami. I'm not having them beating Buffalo. But I also hate Aaron Rodgers. So my third place team is the New York Jets. So I said all that about Miami, and we'll breeze through them when I talk about them at number 2. But I think the Jets are trending in the right direction. I like Robert Saleh, their coach.
They had some nice pickups.
They have back-to-back great drafts. They've got a lot of talent. But something tells me that Aaron Rodgers will get going, and then he'll self-destruct. Does that mean they finish in third? They go 9-8 or 10-7. Maybe they make the playoffs. Maybe they finish ahead of the Dolphins in the regular season. I don't trust Aaron Rodgers because I think Aaron Rodgers has become Brett Favre. He's this prima donna who's all about him. He doesn't care what's best for the team. That's always tough for me to swallow. Aaron Rodgers is also a goofball about stuff he does off the field and in his personal life, which, okay, you do you, but just his antics the last 3 years have made me do a 180 on him. Not that I ever loved him, but I didn't root against him until the last 3 or 4 years, leading up to the drafting of Jordan Love, then everything that happened during the pandemic, and just his attitude towards the Packers and football in general. I do not like him.
How many year contract did he sign?
I think it's only 2.
2 year.
He did. I don't think he signed a new contract. He just has 2 years left on the deal he signed with Green Bay last year. And I don't think yet the Jets have reworked that. But he also gave them no guarantees that he wouldn't retire after this year. He's technically under their control, though, for the 23 and 24 seasons. So maybe the Jets get off to a great start. That's last year's schedule. They have a lot of young talent. I know people were high on Will McDonald. I love Joe Tipman, their second-round draft pick. Those two alone are great additions for them. Aaron Rodgers, their quarterback. Breece Hall is coming back from an injury. Michael Carter and Zonovan Knight have played significant amounts for them over the last couple of seasons. Yeah, they brought in Randall Cobb, added him to a already deep receiving group that after they added Alan Lazard, they still had Corey Davis. Garrett Wilson was Offensive Rookie of the Year last year. They also have Denzel Mims, a young player. Tyler Conklin, CJ Uzama, Jeremy Ruckert is a great 3-guy rotation at tight end. They have some issues at offensive line staying healthy, but they also have to figure out who's playing left and right tackle because Mekhi Becton wants to play left and Dwayne Brown also wants to play left. But they brought in Connor McGovern from your Dallas Cowboys, former Penn Stater, to possibly play center. I talked about them drafting Joe Tipman. They signed Lincoln Tomlinson a few years ago. They have Billy Turner, Elijah Vera Tucker. They have a better offensive line than the Dolphins, which makes me mad. And defensively, they were outstanding last year on the defensive line. Quinnen Williams is one of the best to do it. They have Solomon Thomas and Al Woods there with him. They brought in Will McDonald as an edge rusher. They also have Carl Lawson and Jermaine Johnson. C.J. Mosley was a guy that I always wanted Miami to get out of Alabama before he went to Baltimore and now in New York. Quincy Williams is a great linebacker for them. They just signed Adrian Amos, the former Bear and Packer who played at Penn State, to shore up their secondary because unfortunately one of their guys for them, I think it was Chuck Clark, who they brought over from Baltimore. He, I believe, tore his ACL and is out for the season. But they have the returning defensive rookie of the year in Sauce Gardner. They have Jordan Whitehead at strong safety. They excuse me. They're stocked and stacked there. But something tells me that Aaron Rodgers will find a way to not make that work.
I was going to say, Rodgers is the reason I have them as number 2.
They start the season in Buffalo, so we'll find out. See, this is what I feel like is going to happen. Aaron Rodgers is going to lead the Jets to an early season. They're going to look really good. Maybe they beat Buffalo at home. Maybe they go to Dallas and beat Dallas in Dallas.
Is that the second game?
Yeah, that's the second game. Then they have New England. So even if they say they lose to Dallas, but they beat Buffalo, New England, they have a tough schedule, though, because they're in the AFC East. They have to play the other AFC East teams, and they have to play the NFC East this year. So they start with host Buffalo, go to Dallas, host New England, host Kansas City, go to Denver, host Philly. So
that's a tough start.
4 of their home games are Buffalo, New England, Kansas City, Philly. Their season ticket holders should be very happy. It is a tough start, but what if they go 4-2 in those games? You know, say they lose to Kansas City and Philly. They lose to the 2 Super Bowl teams from last year, but they beat Buffalo, Dallas, New England, and Denver. Is anyone going to be upset about that? They have winnable games against the Giants, Chargers, and Raiders coming out of the bye before they have to play Buffalo and Miami. They don't play Miami at all until after Thanksgiving. Or they play Black Friday. Miami, New York is on Black Friday. So I'm looking at this. So they have 6, 7, 8, 9 games before they play Buffalo for a second time and then Miami for the first time on Black Friday. What if they're 7-2? Everything's going great. Then you play Buffalo and Miami.
And lose those 2.
And you lose those 2. They rebound against Atlanta and Houston to get to 9-4. But then something tells me, what if they finish with 4 straight losses then?
Who do they play?
And this isn't saying that they're not as good as these teams, but there's something. They play at Miami. Then they host Washington, who they're better than Washington. They go to Cleveland. I think they're better than Cleveland. They go to New England. I think they're better than New England. Something's going to happen here that I'm not willing, and this is my bias. I hate Aaron Rodgers, and I hate the New York Jets. There's no way I'm saying they're going 12-5. I'm not doing it. And if they do it, okay. It happens. I'll look like a moron. It's happened before, too. I've looked like an idiot on this show with things I've said. I hated on the Saints for how long, and they always prove me wrong. I am not predicting the New York Jets to go 12-5. So I'm picking them in 3rd in the AFC East. I'm going to say they go 9-8. They start off strong, but they finish weak, just like Brett Favre and the Jets did, 13 years ago, 14 years ago, whenever that was. I'm not letting it happen. The Jets are 3rd place.
I figure they're going to be 11-6.
11-6. Oh, God, that better not happen. Well, I already talked about the Dolphins a lot. They're my 2nd place team. They went 9-8 last year. I hope they can be 50% healthier than they were last year, and I hope Jalen Ramsey doesn't look like a dumbass and actually can play the position and not be all about himself. Tyreek Hill was able to do it last year because I have my opinions on Tyreek Hill, but last year with Miami went pretty well. Him and Waddle were amazing and had incredible chemistry with Tua. Hopefully that comes back again. Hopefully the Dolphins' offensive line can get better. I'll put them in 2nd place at, I'll say 10-7, 1 game in front of the Jets. I would love to say 12-5. That would make me very happy. The problem with the AFC East teams is I think they're going to beat each other up, and then they're also going to get beat up by the NFC East. Not to say the AFC East isn't better than the NFC East. I just think the NFC East is also very deep and has 2 very good teams and then 2 teams that are average, whereas I believe the AFC East has 3 very good teams and 1 that is average. Sorry, Uncle Rich. Despite what he picks, Miami cannot finish in 4th. That cannot happen. Even if they still make the playoffs as the fourth team and they like 9-8, I cannot have them finish behind New England. That cannot happen. So I have Miami in second at 10-7, which means I have Buffalo in first. I'm not ready to unseat Buffalo because I think Buffalo is designed. I feel like Buffalo is the Green Bay of the AFC. I feel like Buffalo has enough talent to win the division, look really good in the regular season. Josh Allen will look superhuman one week. Then they'll be an absolute train wreck the next. They lose these random games. They lost to Jacksonville 2 years ago, 9-6. How does that Buffalo team lose to that Jacksonville team that was terrible? How does that happen? What was Buffalo's record last year? 13-3.
Let's see. I think they're going to take a step back.
They lost to Miami in week 3. That was when we were at Knoebels, and I was freaking out to try to find the end of the game. They lost to Miami in week 3 in Miami by 2. They lost at the Jets in week 9 by 3. Then they lost the next week in overtime to the Vikings, and that was a bananas game. Do you remember that? Where it looked like Minnesota was going to win, and then Buffalo scored and took the lead, and then Minnesota down in the field but didn't score. New England or Buffalo took over at like the 1, and then they fumbled in the end zone. And it was in overtime. It was crazy game. They lost that game. They had a no contest against the Bengals. That's why they were 13-3. So their 3 losses came by a combined 8 points. And they easily could have won any of those 3 games. They could have been 16-0 last year. And because they destroyed the Rams. They destroyed the Titans. They squeaked by the Ravens. They were actually losing that game for a while. They destroyed Pittsburgh. They beat Kansas City in Kansas City 24-20. They beat the Packers. They beat the Browns. They squeaked by Detroit. That was when Detroit started to get things going, but they still did beat them on the road too. They beat New England by 2 touchdowns. They beat the Jets by 8 when the Jets started to fall apart. They beat the Dolphins 32-29. That one was really frustrating. They destroyed the Bears. Wasn't it? Then the game of the Monday night game of the century against the Bengals got no contest because of the unfortunate situation with Damar Hamlin. And then they beat the Patriots to end the year. So they ended the year on a 7-game winning streak. They were beating up teams pretty good. They were looking like world beaters. Everyone thought that they were, Super Bowl AFC favorites, Super Bowl contenders entering the year, and they didn't prove anyone wrong. They went 13-3. But then the playoffs happened. They looked awful against the Dolphins. They allowed Skylar Thompson to put up like 32 points or something ridiculous like that. And then they looked terrible against the Bengals at home. So I know people really like their coach. There's a huge contingent that thinks Sean McDermott is great. I just struggle with him in crunch time. It just seems like they have a couple weird losses that come down to coaching. 2 years ago to start the season, they lost to Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh was not good. They lost to Jacksonville, like I just mentioned, 2 years ago. In Jacksonville, 6-9. They got destroyed by the Colts 2 years ago, 41-15. They ended the season on a 4-game winning streak, and then they absolutely annihilated the Patriots in the playoffs, and everyone thought, this is it. We've got it. Don't worry about Patrick Mahomes anymore. It's Josh Allen and the Bills. And then Patrick Mahomes did his thing after questionable decisions by the Buffalo Bills coaching staff to kick the ball instead of trying to run out the clock. They lost to the Chiefs in overtime 42-36. Well, last year was supposed to be the revenge tour. Well, they went 13-3 in the regular season and looked pretty good doing it. But it's unfathomable to me that they can look that bad against the Cincinnati Bengals in the playoffs. And I'm a huge Joe Burrow fan. That was unreal the way Buffalo looked against New England last year in the playoffs. They lost 27-10 at home, and it was not that close.
No, it wasn't.
So
well, the year before, was that crazy game that they lost
against the Chiefs? Yeah. Where there was 6 touchdowns in the fourth quarter and overtime. Yeah. In the fourth quarter and overtime, there's 3 touchdowns by each team or something ridiculous. Yeah. So, I'm sorry. There's 2 Connor McGoverns. Connor McGovern for Dallas went to Buffalo. I said he went to New York. My bad. He didn't go to the Jets. He went to Buffalo. So Connor McGovern goes to Buffalo to shore up their offensive line. They add Damian Harris from the Patriots. They bring in Taylor Rapp, one of the safeties for the Rams. They brought in Latavius Murray to shore up the running back position with Damian Harris because they didn't re-sign their running back. Why can't I think of his name? I think did he go to the Texans? Yeah, Devin Singletary. So they brought in Damian Harris and Latavius Murray to pair with James Cook, who they drafted a year ago. And they just recently signed Leonard Floyd and Cameron Dancer, two veterans to their defense. One as an edge rusher and one as a defensive back depth. Their biggest losses, probably Tremaine Edmonds, the linebacker, going to the Bears. Devin Singletary, I mentioned, their running back, going to the Texans. That's about it. I guess you could make a case for Isaiah McKenzie, but he didn't have a year that they thought he was going to have last year. And Jamison Crowder, two depth wide receivers, are no longer there. They drafted Dalton Kincaid from Utah in the first round. It'll be interesting to see how they deploy him. They also brought in Osiris Torrance, one of the better interior offensive line draft picks this past year. So they want to make some noise on the ground, shore up things, give Josh Allen maybe a little bit of a break. And I think that's the biggest thing holding them back is that by their offense revolves around Josh Allen. Surprise, surprise, the quarterback is the main guy. But they ask him to do so much, or Josh Allen's asked himself to do so much, that he sometimes does too much. He has games where he throws really bad picks. He has games where he gets beat up. It hasn't really quite happened yet, but one of these seasons, he's going to do too much with his legs, and it's going to cost him a few games. It hasn't really impacted him yet, but there's going to be an injury that bites them because Josh Allen has to do so much. They don't have enough talent at the skill position outside of Stephon Diggs, who is unhappy or mad. I don't know. Will he even be around in training camp? Who knows? But if he wouldn't show up, they would be in trouble because then it's just Josh Allen until someone else proves otherwise. I know people like Dawson Knox, and I mentioned they brought in Dalton Kincaid. But outside of Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen, what do they have? Gabe Davis didn't have the year people thought he was going to have. After he blew up in that game against the Chiefs in the playoffs a year and a half ago that they lost, he didn't have a great year. I can't pick against Josh Allen and this team because of what they've done in the regular season the last 3 years. And even, they've looked good at times in the playoffs, but then they have these questionable coaching decisions. And I can't get that out of my mind. So I think Buffalo is your regular season champion. I would not say that they're one of my picks to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl, though.
What's their schedule? Who they play this year?
So round it out. We know it's going to be tough. They actually, honestly, they have an easy start to the year. They need to start 3-0. They have an unknown in the Jets. People think they'll be pretty good, but I think a lot think Buffalo's better. So you should win that game. Then they have to beat the Raiders and the Commanders. You have to win those games. Because then you have the Dolphins and Jaguars. Luckily for them, both home games. The Jaguars games in London. Then they have the Giants, again, also at home. Before they go to New England and have their schedule is not as bad in the beginning as some of the other teams. So Buffalo needs to get out to a fast start, just like the Jets. They have the head-to-head match. Then they got to beat the Raiders and Commanders. They have the Dolphins, Jaguars, Giants, Patriots, Buccaneers, Bengals, Broncos, Jets, Eagles before their late bye in Week 13. They've got an interesting final 5 weeks, though, as they go to Kansas City, host Dallas, go to the Chargers, host New England, and the last game of the year is at Miami. Man, I hope that's for the division championship. Actually, I don't. I hope Miami's a few games ahead of them by then. So I'm going with Buffalo. They were 13-3 last year. I think I'll put them at 12-5.
That's what I was exactly what I was going to
say.
12-5.
A little bit of a step back. I feel like for something was saying that they were. I'm going to say they were going to lose that Bengals game, even though it wasn't played. They were going to be 13-4, so it's only really a game back if they went 13-4 last year. They could have been 14-3. Then it's 2 games back. 12-5 is nothing to sneeze at. They need to be more concerned about how they play in January, though, because that's been their biggest issue, is play and coaching in the last 2 postseasons. That maybe for them, maybe their Super Bowl window is closing. I mean, you hate Josh Allen's still very young. He just signed an extension. He is very good, but they have not done a great job of surrounding him with enough talent, or the coaching staff has fallen short of what the players could have accomplished on the field. So the AFC East, I'm giving to the Bills again for the 4th straight year. I don't like it, but I'll take it over the Jets or the Patriots winning it for now. I can't see the Patriots back at the top. I don't want that too soon. I don't want Aaron Rodgers and the Jets there, and I'm not enough of a homer to put Miami up there, though that's obviously what I hope happens. And in honor of us doing the AFC East and NFC East, I wore my Miami Mountaineer shot commemorative tee from December 1st, 2019, when the Dolphins, who were god-awful that year, upset the Eagles on a trick play that helped by a trick play. And that was a year after the miracle in Miami, where the Dolphins beat the Patriots on the last play of the game.
I remember that.
Back-to-back December, fantastic victories for my Dolphins that meant basically nothing to them at all. But anytime you can beat the Eagles and the Patriots, I will take that. I will take that. And the Dolphins have the chance to do that this year, playing the Eagles again. So Dolphins have a winning streak against the Eagles. They beat them in 2019 when they shouldn't have. They beat them in 2015 when both teams were average at best. And I was at that game. I went with Nick. And the Dolphins won like 19-17 or something like that. I don't remember what happened in 2011. I think they lost. But last 2 against the Eagles, owned by the Dolphins. Dolphins also have a winning streak against the Patriots, don't they? Not the Bills, though. I think, did Miami beat New England twice last year? Did that happen? Or am I making that up? I know they won the first one. Oh, no. That's right. New England won by 2 when Tua was out. Yeah, stupid.
That's the key for your team, is you got to keep him healthy.
That makes me so... Christmas was ruined last year because they lost to Aaron Rodgers and the Packers when they shouldn't have. Then all of a sudden, Tua had another concussion and missed the game against the Patriots and the Jets. Frustrating. All right, so there you have it. That's the AFC. So we both have New England last. You have them 0-17. I have them 6-11. No, you had them 5-12, which we got the 5 wins from Uncle Rich. Let's see if he said anything else. Oh yeah. So he says that his Patriots coffee club has them all beating the Saints and Commandos, and they all definitely say they're not beating the Chiefs. He asked, "Isn't it past your bedtime?"
It is.
So we both agree Patriots in last. I have Jets in third at 9-8. You had Dolphins in third at 9-8, 10-7. You had the Jets in there around 10-7 at second. I have the Dolphins in second around 10-7, and then we both have the Bills in first at 12-5.
Yep.
So that's for you, Uncle Rich. Write that down so you can keep track of all this stuff, so that we have it for you. At the end of the season, we can be accountable. And some of the things I said tonight might look really bad, and that's fine. We'll deal with that in January. But for now, we're going to wrap things up. So AFC East done, NFC East done, all 8 divisions done in 3 weeks, not 2 weeks, 3 weeks, July 9th. Justin and I will be joined by a recent Wilson graduate, a former Wilson Bulldogs basketball player, and he's playing basketball in college. He's interested in media and broadcasting and has been asking us about the podcast for a couple of years now. When we are going to have him here in studio on the show to talk about the NFL playoffs and Super Bowl. As long as things work out on his end, that's tentatively scheduled. Hopefully things don't change in the next few weeks, but we will have a guest here to talk about our NFL playoff and Super Bowl predictions for the 2023 season. Again, 3 weeks, Sunday, July 9th, normal time. Other than that, I just want to say Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day to you, too.
Happy Father's Day to all of you out there listening. I know Uncle Rich for sure. Happy Father's Day to you. And I can also say that we'll see you in about a month. So we are going to be visiting, which will be a lot of fun. We haven't been up there in 9.5 years. When we went up to see the Dolphins Patriots game for my 30th birthday was the last time that we were up there, I believe. So.
Well, we never get asked up.
Right, they're just whenever we say we're coming, they're just like,
oh,
really?
we're not home.
I do want to say happy belated birthday to Wyatt, who I wanted to mention the last show 2 weeks ago, and I wasn't certain that it was coming up, and it was, of course, and then I missed it. So happy belated to Wyatt. See if I can make sure I'm not missing anyone else. I'm sure I am because I always do. But yeah, happy Father's Day to everyone. Hope everyone had a great day. Happy birthday to Brian. Brian's birthday is tomorrow. So the New England gang can't keep him straight. Uncle Rich needs to keep on top of me. He's usually letting me know if I'm gonna miss anything. Just browsing ahead, see anyone else before the next show. Probably will because it's 3 weeks from now. But what are you gonna do? So, well, thanks to you, Dad, for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
I'm glad to have you back on the show to talk about the East Divisions. It was a lot of fun. Hope everyone had a great Father's Day. And Justin and I will be back in 3 weeks. I do have a show next week. It will be Bulldog Hour. I'm not sure who's joining me yet, but we'll be talking Wilson football. Got a lot to talk about as it's now to me it's now football season. You know, we're here and ready to go. As much as I'm loving watching the Phillies 13-2 in their last 15 and baseball, football is my number one love, so I'll always be focused on that. And we'll be talking Wilson football next week on the Bulldog Hour. But that's it for us here on the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show, episode 383 in the book. So for my dad and the not existent Justin Raffoff this evening, thanks for listening, and we'll be back again in 3 weeks on Sunday, July 9th.
Good night.
Good night. See you all later.
That's a wrap on this episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show, brought to you by Mays Sandwich Shop. Woo-hoo! You can watch each weekly episode live on Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube. Be sure to like, follow, or subscribe to the show on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play. You can also rate and review us on many of these platforms as well. We'd love to hear from you. Send your emails to the Mays Sandwich Shop inbox at joemaysandjraff@gmail.com. The Joe Mays and J-Raff Show is a part of the JMNJR Radio Network, home to other productions such as the Bulldog Hour, Tangents with Friends, and Nat Chats with Dad. Until next time,